Welcome back to Fork. How are you?
I'm doing well. How are you? I'm excited about our guest today.
Yes, Vani, welcome. We are so thrilled to have you here and have a nice chat about the food and the politics.
There's so much going on.
Helena, you're up first. Why don't you jump in?
Yeah, okay, so I wanted to actually bring us back to the spring because I have this very clear memory. I should probably say first that I've covered Vani Hari for I don't know, 15 years. Like you've been on the food radar for a long time. I think you call yourself public enemy number one of the food industry. And I think that's true. Like a lot of my sources in the food industry hate you.
I didn't name myself that. That was the New York Times.
So, but I think there's truth to that. Like I definitely hear from folks in the industry that you drive them nuts. Like they do not like you. And one of my most vivid memories covering this administration is last spring when you were on the lawn of the White House with FDA Commissioner Marty McCary, and you were doing TV hits side by side, like together. And you posted on X something like, well, I guess we have it pulled up here. You posted on X, "Dear food industry, I know you didn't want to do this, but it's okay. You'll have to anyway. I hope you enjoy this clip of me on the White House lawn with the head of FDA. Love Food Babe and her army." And this was about food dyes, of course. This was like a big deal. The administration's trying to phase these out. They did not ban them, but they are pushing the industry to phase these out. Can you just talk, let's just start there. How did you go from this loathed food blogger building this audience, this army, to the power that you now hold in this movement and in this administration? Like you're standing there with the FDA commissioner. Like, how did this happen? Like, what is your elevator pitch for how you got this power?
Yeah. I think it's just years and years and years of telling the truth and not being afraid to tell the truth and staying on the topic and being really clear about the ways the food industry has duped the American people, how they've used their ability to make money and put profits before people, and calling out the times where the food industry hasn't been held accountable, where they outright lied to people on the issue of artificial food dyes, how they, in 2015, so many big food conglomerates like Mars and General Mills and Kellogg's all came out and said, we are going to remove artificial food dyes, got worldwide press about it, and then literally went back on their commitment. And nobody was holding them accountable. Nobody in Washington, there was no politician, there was no nonprofit organization doing anything about the fact that they lied to the American public. And I think it's just, this is one of those things that when you learn the truth about how American food companies can reformulate their products with better, safer ingredients in other countries and take out these artificial food dyes in the exact same products that they're selling here in the United States, you can't look away. There's no way that doesn't make you mad when you see the side-by-side images of Fruit Loops in Korea and India and China and Canada and Australia and all of Europe that doesn't have artificial food dyes, and it has it here in the United States. It's like, what are we doing to our own children? And seeing those side-by-side comparisons, which, when I first did the investigation on US foods versus Europe and the rest of the world, it was 2013. So it's like 13 years ago that I did that initial investigation where I did the side-by-side images. And I compared everything from, Quaker oatmeal to McDonald's French fries to cereals to, yogurts, all kinds of things. And it was the blog post that went the most viral because people were upset. And at the beginning of that blog post, I put the stats that are talked about every day now in this administration about how we are so sick, how we have so many chronic diseases, how the rates of diabetes and heart disease and cancer and everything just keep increasing. And we're not looking at the food. We're not looking at the chemicals we've put in our food, and how we've engineered our food to become addictive, and how our food is so different than the rest of the world that has better health outcomes.
Yeah.
Right.
Really quick, did it go viral at the time? Okay, so it went
Yes,
viral
it
like
did.
12 years ago. And then I do think this specific narrative of comparing American food ingredients to the same products in Canada or Europe was really potent during like the run up to the 2024 election. Like you heard it a lot. Like I remember you made this point at the Senate roundtable, the MAHA roundtable, like the September before the 2024 election, and you got a standing ovation. Like people were they were mad. They were like, this is like, it seemed like this very potent argument, but it is interesting that like you were talking about this 12 years ago and now it has sort of taken on a life of its own. And like, we should also say the reason those ingredients are different is because like FDA has not banned, they allow those, like they've determined they're safe or they're grass, or so there is like a regulatory reason for that. But I'm curious, like with all of this new focus from the administration, and like you're obviously very close with these folks, like standing on the White House lawn, you were there when Kennedy and McCary announced that they were going to phase these out at HHS. Did you ever think about going into the administration? Like, or why, I guess, why didn't you? Like, couldn't you have been running food over at FDA? I mean, Kyle Diamantis obviously has that role, but like, why didn't you go in?
Yeah, I mean, that's a good question. It's probably because I hate politics.
You
Well,
hate politics.
I want to answer that. This is politics, but we're talking about being on the lawn of the White
Oh,
House.
she's
I
like, I
know,
know.
I know,
100%
and
politics, you know?
it is a love
Ooh.
hate battle every single day of my
Yeah.
life. You don't know how many times I've wanted to just quit being a food activist this year.
Really?
In the last yes, in the
Go
last
online.
year.
It is
Well, wait,
terrible.
It's
so wait,
so
let me ask you
hard.
about that. I want to
And
ask you that. So
Yeah,
give us an example
sure.
of what made you want to quit.
Yeah. Well, it's just, first of all, in politics, there's never anything that it's usually so much negotiation happening behind the scenes with all of the interested parties that you have to compromise. And I just don't like compromising. I like getting my way.
Okay.
And so
it's good to be clear about that, to know that. Yeah.
For my personality type, it's really hard to do that and to be in that position day in and day out and almost muzzle yourself in a way, right? And that's just the reality of it. There's no, like, I don't think we're ever going to solve that until we get rid of the two-party system, right? And so that two-party system situation is bigger than my realm of influence, I feel like. And so given what we have, it becomes very frustrating. And there have been times, for example, within the last year where nonprofits who I have loved and worked with and tirelessly linked to and promoted and sent people there on Giving Tuesday and all of that they won't get involved in some of the things that are happening now because the other party is leading the conversation. And that's very frustrating. And I am of the ideology that if you have an opening, if you have home court advantage, if you have the opportunity to make a change, you should do it. You should gather your forces. You should get everybody together, collaborate, create a coalition. Let's get this done while everybody's paying attention for the first time ever.
But is
right?
that an absolute? I mean, like, if you're those nonprofits that are unwilling to step in because it's the Trump administration, that may be connected to other issues related to the Trump administration, right? So how do you make that kind of decision? This is something, here's these other things happening in the world of Trump that maybe I don't have any position on, maybe I don't agree with, maybe I do agree with, I don't know. but I don't want to get
Right.
involved, right? That's not my thing. I'm here for for the food dyes and food health and that kind of stuff. How do you decide what makes it okay? And that really gets back to Helena's original question, was why are you not a part of the administration, right? How do you decide how far into the camp of the current administration you want to get into, and when do you decide, well, no, that's too close for me?
Yeah, I mean, again, I've kept all other topics, are off limits on Food Babe. Food Babe's the platform, my voice, everything has been solely focused on talking about processed foods, talking about how food is produced, how um, the food affects your body and your health. And it stems back from how I felt as a child, where I ate every single processed food under the sun, was raised on processed food, raised on fast food, because my parents, who were both teachers and immigrants, they came to the United States, they had nothing, and fast food was cheap and it was easy to feed us. And they had no idea that this food was bad for us, or that it would eventually lead to health issues, which it did with me, where I ended up being on 9 prescription drugs by my early 20s, had 2 abdominal surgeries, one where I almost died. And so it's 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 that situation that I think back at, of like, there's so many Americans out there that are in this position, not feeling the best that they could feel because they don't know the truth about food. And I truly believe that, like, you don't even find your calling in life, or like why you're meant to be here, until you get your true health. Like, I don't feel like you serve God's purpose until you actually clean up your body and feel really super healthy. Like, I don't even feel like you can give back to the world because you're just surviving. You're just in your own misery and you don't even understand what you're able to give back to the world. And so, like, for me, health is the number one priority for everyone before anything. And so for me, when I think about all the other politics going on in the world that I may or may not agree with, that is the thing that's my true North Star that I just keep focusing on. And it's the thing that I think also has made me able to be part of this administration without the backlash of politics, in a way, not being part of the administration, but being a supporter of what they're doing. Because, and when I think about wholeheartedly what I want out of these next 3 years that we have left, I want the Make America Healthy Again movement to succeed more than anything, because this is our opportunity. We have the head of HHS, we have the head of FDA that knows what he's doing. We've got the head of US Foods that is, so far so good, a good guy that I've, had interactions with. I think we have a real opportunity to get things done in a way that we've never had before, where it takes the snail's pace of
Decades.
10,
Decades.
15
Yeah.
years, decades to get anything done. I mean, it took 30 years to ban one food dye, red number 3, which wasn't even in a lot of foods, right? It was in maraschino cherries.
Yeah, trans
and,
fat took decades and literally causes
Yeah.
tens of thousands of premature deaths, which is
Yes.
So
Yes. It just took
Yeah.
so long. And it's like, if we can change the culture of how Americans eat in this short period of time, we've done quite a bit, right? If we can get them to eat more real food. I mean, just hearing Secretary Kennedy say that this week as part of, last week, of the dietary guidelines announcement, and saying, we need to eat more real food. I mean, that is the crux of everything I've been working on, right? Like, if I would say there's just one goal in mind that I have through all the silly campaigns against yoga mat chemicals and artificial dyes and all of the things that I target to wake Americans up, it's to eat more real food. So I couldn't have thought of something more grandeur that coming from the government to, go out there and spread this culture across America, and spread it across a group of people that have largely been asleep to these issues. And that's what I think is so good for this country. Like, me getting invited on Republican leaning podcasts, and, the wives of people who are in the administration, and, and being part of this new group of people to educate them about what has happened to our food system and how it's been engineered to, from everything to the texture, to the color, to the preservatives, to the flavorings, how everything is engineered against our senses so that we can't stop eating, and have them understand what a force we're up against, how PepsiCo has a robot in their science labs that mimic human taste buds so that we cannot.
It's us versus the robots. Yeah. It's us.
What?
It's us
What'd you
versus
say?
the robots. Yeah.
Yeah, it's us versus the robots, right? And it's like, how do we even stand a chance against that type of manipulation? And like, if I can get this message out to a whole new group of people that have, these type, like people like myself haven't been on those platforms, like that is so good for American health. It's so good for all kinds of people. And I feel like we live in this divisive time where, social media especially is like almost created to create this ongoing fight about every single topic. And we're not supposed to know about how we feel about every single topic. Like human beings aren't supposed to know about how everyone feels about a certain thing. It's like, it's too much information. It's like, you should learn about your friends and what they think by speaking to them and having conversation, not like these 1 minute viral clips on someone taking out of context or something. And it's such a messed up world. And I want to do everything in my power and my ability so that I can contribute in a positive way towards that. And if I can keep like bringing people back to this idea that like, hello, without health, you have nothing. Who cares about all of this other stuff, right? Then they really come together in this kumbaya moment, and they're like, yeah, I see it, Bonnie, I get it. And you don't know how many times I've had comments on social media and DMs and other things of like, I can't believe you're doing this. I cannot believe you went to the White House. I cannot believe all of this, right? And it's like, I fight back and I answer almost every single comment because I feel so strongly that like, who do you want in the White House fighting for better food? Do you want someone else there? Or would you rather have me, right? And when I even ask that question to my followers or the people who have been like, oh, I've followed you forever, I can't believe this, right? They kind of question themselves and they're like, wait a minute, yeah, we do want you fighting for us, Bonnie, because you tell the truth and you're not scared to tell the truth.
All right, so I'm going to shift gears a little bit. I'm going to take in that answer. I'm going to have to go listen to it after we finish this recording and try to take in all the different things that you said. But let's talk about something we cover at FERN, the Food and Environment Reporting Network, a lot, which is Roundup. Right. So the Supreme Court has agreed to take on a case brought by Bayer where they want to suppress state bans on glyphosate, the chemical ingredient in Roundup, because they have not. It doesn't include warnings for people that it may cause cancer. Right. At the federal level, the EPA and its leader, Lee Zeldin, they are on the side of Bayer in this case, which is causing a split within this part of the Trump administration that you are adjacent to. I don't know how you put it, like you are in but not in. And there's been calls for Lee Zeldin to be fired and to step down. And I'm curious how you square that with the same thing that you just said about being on the inside, working with the administration, being the person that can sort of bridge the gap between Democrats and Republicans on these political issues, as the federal government is going against what the MAHA movement really, really wants, which is one of the things that it really, really wants, which is for Roundup to be taken off the market and to be out of our food system and out of our foods.
Yeah. I mean, just to tell you that petition, firing anybody in any kind of position would not solve the issues that we have had decade after decade at the EPA. And I would say it was the frustration of the pesticide policy to date that led to that.
Because they're approving new pesticides that environmentalists and health advocates are really concerned about. Yeah.
That's right. And so, I think what's really important to recognize is that the EPA has failed to protect the public health when it comes to chemicals like glyphosate, as you mentioned. And signing that petition was really about elevating the urgency of the situation. And I think one of the things that, I feel personally responsible for is I didn't reach out to Lee before signing that. And I think that was a huge mistake. I think that I should have sat down with him and talked to him about this bubbling up frustration that's happening within people who really believe in the MAHA movement.
Well, what would that
And
have done?
and there's
Speaking to Lee Zeldin, what would your goal been with that? I mean, so if I'm understanding you
yeah,
correctly, you don't think he should be fired, or you don't think anybody should be fired for these kinds of things. But what would speaking to Lee Zeldin do?
yeah. I mean, I think one of the things that the EPA should understand is that when we have the president of the United States running on the issues of food and health and regulating chemicals and pesticides, which is something that he mentioned when he got together with
Yeah,
Secretary
mentioned
Kennedy.
often. Yeah.
Right. He tweeted recently on Truth Social, I can't remember the exact tweet, but it was something along the lines of like, I'm witnessing the mass poisoning of America. And I'm like, yes.
Trump said that?
Yes.
Oh, I
Yes.
missed that.
Yes. he
I'm
did.
not on Truth
Yes.
Social like that.
Yeah, I don't use
retweeted
Truth
it.
Social
Yeah.
either.
And I was like, yes, you get it. You know what I mean? And so I think in order to serve the president in this way, the EPA really needs to take a new look at glyphosate. The information that we have gotten in the last 10 years is so much more on the side of real human impact. And we also know that when they made the designation that glyphosate doesn't cause cancer back in 2015, they were relying on a ghost written study that was cited, 800 times, I think, to show that glyphosate doesn't cause cancer, going against the International Agency for Research on Cancer and their designation. And when you're going against them, you better have really good science to back up what you're saying. And we now know that science was not good. And so I would, urge him to take a strong stance on glyphosate and the human impacts that it does occur. And I also would say that politically, it is completely explosive and volatile to take any stance when it comes to a pesticide liability shield. And this has been an ongoing whack-a-mole type situation for the last year, where it's been, state bills that come up that are trying to shield Bayer from these cases that they cause cancer. Then there is, sections that are put into the spending bills that we have to go and fight. Then they're trying to do the farm bill that's coming up. That's going to be another fight.
MAHA advocates did get it stripped from the spending bills, which was a huge,
that's right,
sign of power, I think, on the Hill. But
yes.
you are right that there
Yes.
are more attempts coming. Yep.
There are more attempts coming, but if this administration knows what's good for them and they know what's good for MAHA to succeed, they know to get out of this fight right now. It does not serve them to take the stance of a foreign company like Bayer over the American people when it comes down to their product potentially causing cancer. And that's what needs to be done. And so I think, the general solicitor deciding to support the case with Bayer at the Supreme Court was a huge mistake. It's what broke the camel's back for so many advocates and why that petition occurred, because it was a knee-jerk reaction, right? But I think there's a real opportunity here because of what happened with that petition. It's almost like the EPA kind of woke up to, wait a minute, we should really be working together on figuring this out. And so they're now opening the door, having conversations with so many
advocates. Have you been
advocates.
part of those meetings? I know there have been a lot of meetings. Yeah.
Yeah, I am going to be actively involved in making sure that we get really meaningful results out of the EPA this year. I think there's some really amazing things that could happen, like, for example, training farmers to remove their reliance on pre-harvest use of glyphosate. Um, the percentage of glyphosate that's used in that way, where they dry out the crops right before harvest, is a very small percentage. They say it could be up to like 3% or maybe a little bit more, but and there's not like a ton of accurate data with that, because not all farmers tell you that they're doing this, and there's just not everybody reporting. But what scientists have found is that small percentage of glyphosate being used for a drying agent so they can rotate the crops faster, that small percentage is actually 60 to 80% of humans' load and their impact. It's the reason why we have it in our urine. It's the reason why it's in breast milk. It's the reason why it's in oats and almonds and wheat in an extraordinary amount when it's being tested, right? And why you find it in things like Doritos and Cheerios and Quaker Oats. It's problematic because it's being sprayed at the last stage of the growth cycle, and it's staying on the product, and it's systematic at that point. You can't really wash it off. And so
So you're saying maybe targeting those uses would be.
That's right. I think that could be a huge human health impact that we could have
without banning it writ large.
Without banning it, right? And there are not many nations that outright ban glyphosate. They restrict the use. Like, for example, in Europe, they restrict this pre-harvest desiccation application.
So that's a kind of change, a compromise coming out of the EPA that you could maybe, and this is sort of a leading question.
And I don't even know if it's a compromise. I think telling the truth that glyphosate causes cancer and stopping this pre-harvest desiccation use, which is what is the most problematic for our exposure, those two things would be huge.
Yeah, and I do want to interject, just because we'll have listeners who are wanting this context. But all the health authorities maintain that these uses pose no problems. They're not being found at levels that are over like the thresholds the EPA has set. However, I do think you can understand why consumers, when they read about residues being found in things like Cheerios, which we give to kids, like, you can understand why there would be eyebrows raised about that, or concerns, or just sort of like, is there a way to reduce this? Is there a way to cut this back? Even if there isn't, hard science where EPA is like, oh boy, they're not taking action.
But I just want to follow up on
these uses. I just want to provide that context. But
I want to follow up on this, because what we're talking about is a form of a negotiation with the EPA in time, and this leads to my next question, in time for the midterms, right? Right. That would be the idea, that this could come out, something that the Trump administration could show to maybe some folks in the MAHA movement who are a little upset that these kinds of things didn't happen yet. And the question that I want to get to is, coming into the midterms, one of the narratives that Helena and I talk about on the show all the time is, what is the nature of the MAHA movement politically? It is, right at the moment, I think, pretty closely aligned with the Republican Party, but it seems, and I'm curious what you think about it, because I'm not so sure. It seems that it may be up for grabs, right? Here comes the midterms. The MAHA moms, the MAHA movement haven't gotten what they were hoping for, maybe, depending on how you look at it.
I think some things, but not others. They're mad at EPA, for sure.
I'm just laying out the narrative here. I'm not asserting things factually. I'm laying out a narrative of how it could be understood. And if they don't get what they want by the time of the midterms, they might swing back to the Democrats, right? Do you think what do you think of that? Because I'm not so sure. I think that the MAHA folks, at least the leadership, certainly, I don't know what the voters are going to do, but I think the leadership is staying quite firmly in the Republican Party. But I'm curious to hear your perspective. If things like what you're talking about at EPA don't happen, what happens?
Yeah, I think first of all, there cannot be this, amazing progress at HHS with this amazing collaborative effort that you have with other agencies happening, like with Brooke Rollins, where, together with the dietary guidelines, they had this big moment and this big celebration of eat more real food and whole milk and all of these positive things coming out of the government, and widely celebrated, more positive press than I've ever seen for the MAHA movement that week. Then you have Secretary Duffy from the Department of Transportation, work with Secretary Kennedy on the airports, and that being a big, I just remember the big splash on social media. People loved that, right? Like that was just a huge moment of, yes, we need gyms in airports. Yes, we need better airport food. Like everybody struggles with that, right? When they go travel and they just have to eat the airport food, right? So it's like these moments of like huge wins. We haven't had that with the EPA yet, right? We haven't had that kumbaya moment of like everybody celebrating Zeldin, and I think there needs to be that. And I think there can be that moment. And I think right now the conversations are opening, which make me very hopeful and very positive in that respect. But to answer your question, I think when I think about the MAHA voter is extremely independent minded. And I think it's made up of super diverse voices out there. And they're people who are ones that are the most passionate about these issues. And when you look at polling on pesticides, it is one of the most popular positions to take.
Bipartisan, absolutely.
Bipartisan. It is a 90 plus polling issue that is super popular. So for me, like, again, I hate politics, and I don't want to get involved.
Here we are. About the midterm.
All the things are. But I'll tell you this: if the Republicans know what's good for them, they should do something about this issue, right? Because it's so incredibly popular. And so if they want to ensure their victory in the midterms, this would be the one to focus on, in my opinion, because this is the one that gets everybody engaged and super excited. And I think would even sway some of the environmental folks that, have been a thorn in my side this year, to maybe say, okay, well, we got something done. Maybe something nice will come from that.
One quick thing I want to ask you about on this, because it strikes me that, and we have talked about this a bit on this podcast, it strikes me that one of the reasons that there haven't been big MAHA wins at EPA is just the strength of the agriculture lobby in DC compared to like the food lobby. Like I have covered extensively over the years kind of the crumbling of the food lobby, like GMA imploded.
And it crumbled.
Yeah, it literally imploded.
It was like the Grocery Manufacturers Association, which was, the
Big
former
food. Yeah.
Consumer Brands Association, right? I mean, that was just an abysmal failure, and then they tried to come up with the Americans for Ingredient Transparency front group just recently. And that was, I think,
well, we're going to see. I'm like, I've been meaning to check in. Where's that bill?
Yeah.
But the food lobby's been weakened a lot, but the farm lobby remains very strong. And they really got a lot of pesticide discussion cut out of the MAHA strategy, right? Like there was a lot more talk of that in the initial MAHA report. So like, how do you see that? I mean, it strikes me that this administration is like, it's a little easier to take on the food companies because they're in a weaker position. Whereas like taking on the farm lobby is still like, I mean, good luck. Like they just don't really lose. I think that kind of explains some of the difference. I don't know what you think about that. Despite the popularity,
the issues of food and the issues of pesticides, those have bipartisan support. People like that. They may not like vaccines, but they definitely want to get rid of the pesticides. They want to change the food system. But that ag industry, that ag lobby, they remain a lot stronger.
I think they are stronger. Yeah.
Yes.
Yeah.
They are some of the most sophisticated forces in Washington that I've ever seen. And I've seen it all play out in different ways, in that even the people who are, in the administration have had dealings with big agriculture companies. And it's like there's this systematic conflict of interest happening that hasn't been undone. I mean, I think what Secretary Kennedy has done in HHS has been extraordinary in trying to root out the conflicts of interest, but that work has not been done at the EPA or at the USDA. And so you have those two agencies that are riddled with ex lobbyists for these big food conglomerates. Chemical conglomerates who are selling agrochemicals. You have the farm bureaus who are doing their bidding because they're getting money from the agrochemical corporations, and so it's this like incestuous circle of influence that's happening, and no one's really been able to break through. And I think what has been frustrating is that this movement is an anti-farmer or anti-eating farmed food. It's really about like saving our soil and saving human health and really impacting what's happening here in America. When you look at the statistics and see that we have 500% more glyphosate being sprayed on our land than in other countries. Why is that? Why do we use 25% of the world's pesticides, but we're only 3% of the world's population, right? So are we being systematically poisoned more than everywhere else? And at that point, it becomes an extreme disadvantage from a America First perspective, from a military perspective, from just a sheer might of our country, right? Like we have to look at those, and we have to realistically look at those. And some people say that like in 10 years, we may not have any of these issues anymore because we'll have robots doing all the work in the farm fields.
That's what Brooke Rollins said. Yeah, she said
did
that.
she
Yeah,
say that?
she said something along the line. She was questioned about immigration crackdown in the farming
Oh
system,
boy.
and she said, well, she supports the president, and I don't remember the rest of the answer, but in the future we'll have robots doing these jobs, right? Was the upshot of it.
I will say that for row crops, they're so highly mechanized. I mean, one person, two people can literally manage thousands of acres. So
But not the specialty crops,
not
not
on
the
the
fruits and
specialty crops,
vegetables.
the specialty crops
Yeah.
for sure. Well, and I do want to say I'm not as familiar with the pesticide statistics and usage, but I do think one of the big reasons for the gap is just how much food we produce. So I'm not sure acre for acre how different it is, but I do think you're tapping into something which is real, which is that consumers are increasingly watching, documentaries, or they're asking questions, or they're reading about this, and consumers are asking more questions about like how their food is raised, especially compared to Europe. There seems to be this really big focus right now on like the ways the US food system is different from Europe. And there are a lot of differences. And so this seems like this very salient political argument right now, which is kind of interesting seeing it come from Republicans, because Republicans have always been like, Europe's terrible, or like the socialists, right? And so now it's interesting to peel back and be like, well, maybe we like some of their food stuff. Still don't want the healthcare, but that's a whole other ball of wax, right?
among
So it's been
others,
interesting,
among
like,
other
watching
things that are
that.
in the news related to Europe right now. But yes,
And this is not a foreign policy podcast, but yes,
That's true,
a
yeah.
lot of interesting, crazy things happening. So, but that I do think that European comparison, that's made often, I hear it from Democrats, Republicans, independents. It's not partisan. It is this like increasingly mainstream narrative of like, well, wait, why do I feel better when I walk around and visit Europe? And like, there's lots of theories. Is it less stress? Is it more walking? Is it better healthcare? All the things. But a lot of Americans, when they visit Europe, notice they feel better, and then vice versa. Europeans complain about our food. So it's like, that's a thing that is a real political narrative that I think has taken hold across party, right? And so it'll be interesting to see like, what does that mean going forward? Do like Democrats start? I haven't heard a lot from Democrats on a lot of these issues in a while because it has become so partisan lately. But I don't know. It's very interesting. I don't know. if we want to switch to good vibes, how much time do we have?
Well, I think we have a
Okay.
little more time. I
Okay,
thought we were
okay.
gonna talk about, protein powders,
Oh, yeah, yeah, yeah.
Alina.
So, um, okay, going back to the conflicts of interest thing, which I should have noted earlier when we were talking about rooting out conflicts of interest at USDA and EPA. I think that is generally true that there's a lot of former lobbyists like at USDA and EPA, no question. But there were some concerns raised in the recent dietary guidelines that some of the scientists that helped with the scientific review did have some ties to, I think, particularly dairy and livestock groups. And after Kennedy has focused so much on conflicts of interest, I'm curious, like, what you think about that. And then also more generally, like, you're now part of the food industry. You have a protein powder line, which I like always see
Reviewed
out
on
in
Wirecutter very
retail.
favorably. You did well
Oh,
on
is it?
Wirecutter. Yes, I
Oh,
saw there you were in the, I can't remember what the category they were looking at
I
Wirecutter,
forget
and,
Wirecutter does
and
food.
they were like, "Oh,
That's
yeah, that's one of the
okay.
ones you can try and
So
not
setting
try
that
from."
aside, you're now also part of the food industry. So, like, how do you think about this idea of conflicts of interest? And like, it is a common refrain we hear. It's a common criticism we hear within MAHA that like a lot of people are also within MAHA are also maybe selling a wellness program, like Mark Hyman and Function Health or protein powder or whatever. Like, it does seem to get complicated and blurry. Like, how do you think about conflicts of interest and this criticism that is often leveled to say like, oh, like this is hypocritical because we're mad about this conflicts of interest, but there's also conflicts of interest within MAHA. Do you know what I mean?
Yeah, yeah. I mean, I think it's funny because it's like, I have this hat that says Big Wellness,
You have a hat.
and it's just, yeah, the hat that says Big Wellness, and we all wear it as a joke because it's like, it's like big food
Yeah.
versus big wellness, right? And, when you look down to, if you look into why people created their wellness businesses, it usually was to solve a need that they had that, like with Function Health, I would say, Mark wanted to make it easier to have all these biomarkers that people could make better decisions about their lifestyle, right? With my protein powder, it was the one thing that I used as fast food when I didn't have time to sit down for a meal. And it's like, all the protein powders out there had natural flavors and guar gum and xanthan gum and artificial sweeteners and other additives that I didn't want to put in my body. I was like, why can't I get a good tasting protein powder without any of these additives? There's got to be a way that we can do this. And we did it at Truvani. We proved that you don't have to have all of those unnecessary ingredients in your protein powder to have a good tasting protein powder. And so I also wanted to make it organic and non-GMO and have like the highest quality so that when I'm having my fast food, in the middle of the day when I don't have time to sit down for a meal, I feel good about it, right? And so we're all solving a need in the marketplace for people to feel better, right? Whereas the conflicts of interest that exist within Washington to prevent certain things from happening are actually making people more sick. And I think about Bayer's influence at the top levels of government and Bayer's, the fact that they sell a product that causes non-Hodgkin's lymphoma and then sells the cure to non-Hodgkin's lymphoma, sells the medicine that somebody would take to fix that type of cancer. That's insane. Right. That's insane to have anybody like that having a conflict of interest at the top of government, making decisions on how things are regulated. Right. So we're, it's not just, blanketly throwing around this word conflicts of interest. It's actually when it makes sense for, an agency to make sound decisions based on human health and to take away any influence from industry, then we should be doing that, right? But when it comes to people like me who, I'm on the outside, I don't work for the administration. I want people to eat more real food. And when you look at the integrity behind that statement and the integrity of what I do and what I fight for, it's to get people to eat healthier, right?
So it sounds like what you're saying is like take it case by case. Look at the what they're selling. It's not necessarily like selling something is the problem. It's like not being clear about it. I think a lot of the a lot of the concern with the dietary guidelines has been the lack of transparency around the conflicts of interest and which individuals had conflicts or at least perceived conflicts of interest. And it's hard too,
Yeah.
because on the nutrition side, the reason there's so much industry funding is there's not very much federal funding. And so industry comes to like fill the gap. And that's why you have all these studies that are funded by industry. And if you read Marianne Nestle's food politics blog, she does like a regular series where she
Yeah.
like flags industry funded studies, and like lo and behold, they never show something that's like bad for the funder, right? Like, so it's like this persistent thing that we see in food. And I do think it is a real concern. And I don't know, I'm hearing much more awareness from consumers about it. I mean, I think there is a lot more scrutiny, which is probably good, right? Like scrutiny is good.
So
No, I think it's great.
I'm going to change
Yeah.
gears a little bit. We are coming a little closer to the end, and we're going to do our final segment of what we normally do on the show. It's something called the good vibes, and it's these are complicated times, and it's always nice to have one thing in the food and politics world that you can, or at least the food world that you can point to and say, I could take a little hope out of that. And Helena and I do this each time. We're going to ask you to do it as well. I know you had a little bit of a struggle to come up with a hopeful note to go out of, so I'll go first, if that'll help. All right.
Yeah,
So,
you go first, Ted.
Yes, in these dark days, I always like a good yogurt, and I just discovered, I find this very funny to me because, like, my wife is from Japan. We'll travel there, and you'll eat. There's amazing food there. Everything you eat there is amazing. But you'll also meet somebody in Japan. They'll say, "Well, we make the best brie cheese in the world here in Japan," and you'll be a little shocked. Like, you really think in Japan they make the best brie cheese? But they do, oftentimes. And the one that I discovered
That's a hot take, Ted.
it is a hot
That's
take, but go there. You could meet the average Japanese person on the street. They will tell you that all the food that they make there, whatever kind of cuisine, it's the best. And I think they're right. That's a hot take. That's my hot take for the day. But my good vibe is something I just discovered in the grocery store: Bulgarian yogurt, which is a different category. I've heard of Greek, I've heard of flavored, I've heard of all kinds of yogurt. I've never heard of Bulgarian before. It's a little extra sour, it's a little salty. Damn, it was good. I liked it.
Salty.
Yes.
Okay.
All right, so that's my good vibe.
Okay, I'll go next. I didn't have one coming in, but I thought of one. I think my good vibe right now is that because of the dietary guidelines revamp and all of the noise around it, mixed reaction, lots of positive vibes around the eat real food, consume less ultra processed foods. A lot of criticism around some of the other details, which we should do a whole episode on. But the thing I think is really great about this is it's getting more people to talk about school meals, which is a program. These programs that I have covered for 15 years that like nobody cares about. I mean, nobody like the national conversation, the national press does not focus on these issues. These programs are so important. They serve tens of millions of kids every day. And I think we're about to see more focus and conversation and debate around them. It sort of does take me back to my Michelle Obama days where I was covering this. And it was, I think, briefly a time where we focused on it. Although, of course, Republicans hated it back then. But we're in a different time now. So maybe we'll see a different political debate. But just focusing on it, talking about it, debating it, I think is good because it's a lot of kids, a lot of food. I got school-age kids. I know, Vani, you do too. Like, you see some of the stuff that's served, and it's not what Japan is serving their kids. I'll tell you that.
It's not. They're eating good stuff in their schools. So
we can improve. Let's say that. So,
Bonnie, I hate to put you on the spot too much, but maybe just a little bit. Do you have a
What's
good
your
vibe?
good vibe?
Okay, so when the new upside down food pyramid came out, I was really thrilled with the graphic. I think the graphic is so beautiful, and I love how big the broccoli is. It's like so big. And the day it came out, I of course made broccoli for my son, and he kind of like left it on his plate. He didn't really eat it right away. And I showed him the graphic of the upside down pyramid. And I said, look, this is the new dietary guidelines from the United States government. Look how big the broccoli is on here. Look how important it is. And he was just like, all he had to do was see that visual, which is now on my fridge. And he just ate up like all of his broccoli. It was just the most beautiful moment. And I'm like thinking this is just based on what you just said, Helena. And it's like, how many kids can we impact with this message of like eating real food? And it's so incredible. But my feel good moment, and it makes you literally feel good, is the sauerkraut that I found at Whole Foods recently. That I am obsessed with this brand. Like, it is so
Okay, well, now you have to share what
good.
brand, but only if you don't have a financial conflict of interest with that.
I do not have a financial conflict of interest. I should
Okay,
get
okay.
one.
You will
I should
very
reach
soon,
out to
I
them and
think.
they
I'm
should
gonna write it
sponsor
down.
me. But they should sponsor me. It's called Cultured Traditions. I mean, it's such a no-name
Traditions,
brand,
okay.
but it's Cultured Traditions. It's organic, and they have a variety of different flavors. They have like a Russian style. They have a garlic pickle that is insane. I mean, it's so good. It's like eating pickles.
Love pickles.
And then they also have like a beet version of it with the beet juice, and it's so good. And so one thing I've been doing, which we can go back to the dietary guidelines, they for the first time recommended fermented foods, which is incredible. And fermented foods are so good for your body. It's like good for your immune system, especially right now in cold and flu season, like to have just a little bit every single day. And all I do is take like 2 or 3 tablespoons and just add it to my dinner plate, no matter what we're having. And I'll eat that first almost.
News you can use.
Fermented food, yes,
yes,
now we know.
I know. And it is so good. And I swear it's kept me, I mean, so far so good.
Don't jinx yourself, buddy. Your kids are gonna bring home something gnarly now.
So
no.
now we know sauerkraut is good.
But I think it's the best form of probiotics, right? Like that you can get. And this is going against my financial interest because Truvani does have a probiotics that we sell. But I think this is the most bioavailable way to do it, is by eating sauerkraut and kimchi and fermented foods and fermented vegetables. So anyways, I love it.
All right.
I think
we're going to start to wrap it up from there. Helena, I know you have this great
we don't have
newsletter.
sponsors for this podcast.
We don't have sponsors
we
for this
might
podcast.
now.
Maybe we will. They should come talk to us.
You should go.
I will say, I'm going to ask Helena to talk about her newsletter, and then we'll say goodbye. But before we do that, as soon as I get off this, tonight when my kids are at home, I'm gonna tell them about what you said, Vonnie, and I'll be like, her kids were thinking about broccoli when they looked at the upside down pyramid, and all you guys could see was a ribeye. Yeah, well,
they wanted a ribeye.
Yes. So
children everywhere will use it as they say fit.
Exactly. So Helena, tell me about this newsletter of yours.
Oh yeah. Okay. So anyone who's listening who's not reading Food Fix, go to foodfix.co, get on the list. You can read it every Friday for free and upgrade if you want more. Yeah, I think most people at this point should be reading the newsletter, but definitely fix it if you're not.
All right. Well, thank you so much, Helena. Thank you so much, Vonnie. This was a very interesting conversation. I appreciate you taking the time to come here and talk to us. And Helena, I'll see you in a couple of weeks.
All right. See you soon. Thanks.